Yesterday, in a great hurry, I could somehow manage to cover the intended portions. Information has its own value, but as I earlier mentioned, it is the approach that is very important. And one of the most important seminal features in that approach is regarding the Aryan invasion theory and its repercussions. I think much has been said in these years, especially because of the internet. We have very good access to the sources, and the feeble voice, very faithful to the reality. It was hushed up and it was suppressed, ignored, ridiculed, made fun of, and whatnot. All that was done. In spite of that, some of the contemporary scholars, they have done wonderful job. And in this regard, we could never forget the yeoman service done by the Voice of India and the founder, the late Sitaram Goyal, his wonderful guru Ram Swarup, and his worthy disciple Arun Shauri. I often feel that something like Munitraya to Vyakarana, Panini, Vararuchikatyayana, and Patanjali, and Gaudapada, Shankara, Sureshwara to Vedanta, Anandavardhana, Abhinavagupta, and Bharata to the Indian aesthetics, or else you can take as well Kuntaka. Like that, we have these three, the Trinity, as we can say. They have done wonderful service to the understanding of Indian culture, especially the logical and radical approach and ruthless logic, very sharp and brutal logic, needed, of course, verily needed, with powerful expression and abundant references and highly dependable sources and quotations and citations, all that. And through them, through the publication of Voice of India, people like the contemporary scholars like David Frawley, Vamadeva Shastri, and Navaratna Rajaram, and then we have Shrikant Taligeri, Conrad Yelst, K.D. Setna, and of course, though not belonging to this group of Voice of India, independently doing, Michel Danino, and people like Bhagwan Singh, Kailash Chandra Verma, Suraj Prakash Gupta, Udayveer Shastri, B.B. Lal, they have done wonderful job. B.B. Lal's seminal contribution in archaeology is very noteworthy, and even Bist and many other people. And even before that, almost before a century itself, we had few scholars who worked regarding this. Scholars like A.C. Das, belonging to 19th century, end of 19th century. The 2-volume Rigvedic India is a wonderful study, though they had no greater archaeological evidences and other modern resources. They worked with the original texts and critical analysis, and such pioneers we should always respect. Among them, of course, A.C. Das is there, Buddha Prakash is there, and then no mean person, unforgettable personality, Dr. S. Shrikanta Shastri of Karnataka, who was a former professor of history in Mysore University, and he knew as many as 25 languages, all the ancient languages, and he used to teach in the class. And people like S.R. Rao, very famous archaeologist, marine archaeologist, known for his decoding of Indus script and marine archaeology in Dwarka and Bet Dwarka, such people are all trained. Most of the great historians of Karnataka are trained by Shrikanta Shastri. Even great poets like Kuvempu and others, they were taught by Shrikanta Shastri. Our Dr. S.R. Ramaswamy's uncle, paternal uncle, Dr. S. Shrikanta Shastri, and his erudition in originals is unparalleled. I think no other historian of that quality can be seen. Not to speak of today's, but even in those times also, he was held one of the best historians, archaeologists, and many. He was a multifaceted person. He used to teach in the class. This is the reality. Aryan invasion is a great myth. It's a great hoax. But for the examinations, you write that. But you teach the reality in the classrooms and make your student know about that. And then, independently, from the viewpoint of linguistics, a wonderful work has been done by Sediyapu Krishna Bhatta in his Kannada work, Tathya Darshana, and it has been translated to English also as Discovery of Facts by Padekalu Narasimha Bhatta. Why I am saying, so many scholars from different walks of life and different systems of learning, they did very commendable job in this regard. But they were all kept aside, they were all completely ignored, and they were all ridiculed rather, unduly, of course. And thus, we have to know the implications of Aryan invasion theory. Unless this problem is well understood, and the mindset which worked behind that and still working now in this, unless we understand all these things, our study of Indian culture will not be complete. And even dating of the texts, it is a big question. For that, this will be very useful. Apart from that, the national feeling is very important, and that has been constantly curbed. There is so much of political and religious conspiracy behind Aryan invasion theory, and that has to be solved. All these people have done very good job, and so we don't have any doubts. The facts themselves speak. In spite of that, our so-called secular government, working for conveniences, having strange bedmates, by having a look at the election alliances, all these things have never gone to our textbooks, and our children have been the victims. And I remember, though not to boast my own self, when I was studying in my school days, from 5th standard we had the introduction to Indian history. In the very first chapter it was said, Aryans came from somewhere and they destroyed the Dravidian civilization or the Indus civilization or Harappan civilization, something like that, and they composed Veda. I questioned my teacher, how can it be true? An invader cannot be honest to the land, cannot be honest to the native people. We are so much adhered to, so much rooted in this. Aryans, if they were to be invaders, they could not have. I don't know how could I speak it, but my teacher said, "Talarate sumne kutko." Shut up. That's all. So, this is a perennial question which we come across in such imaginary theories. I shall devote some 20 minutes for this and go to the remaining one. I am not going to the elaborate details. It may take not less than 3-4 hours of discussion, but there are many good books and a very good introduction, very dependable, faithful introduction, very short and sweet, full of facts, is Saraswati River and the Vedic Civilization, History, Science and Politics, written by Dr. N.S. Rajaram. It's a very good book. It has comprehended all the discussions regarding this, and one can safely refer to that. And one can also go to other sources of Voice of India publication. You can get from voiceofdharma.com as well, and many other works too. Well, till the advent of the British, we never had any dream that we are aliens. We came from some place near the Central Asia or Central Europe, like that we never had. And none of the literary sources, they mention this. We have no memory of that, no oral tradition of any kind in any Indian language, not even in Indian languages, not even in foreign languages. We have any oral tradition or any textual reference to the Aryan invasion or Aryan migration. Now the theories have been so well modified. The way of communists is really wonderful. change of grounds is a great logical fallacy. They conveniently apply that. They conveniently follow that. They used to say Aryan invasion theory, AIT. Now it is Aryan migration theory, AMT. Like that, there are many, many theories. A theory is an imagination. It is not reality. But it is taken to the level of sacred truth. So nowhere we have any mention, even a feeble stray mention in our literature, starting from the Vedas to the Puranas, Agamas, whatever. So oral tradition was not there, written tradition was not there, no foreign evidence. In spite of that, they created this. So once for all, it's a new revelation. Why they created, Rajaram has beautifully discussed in another book of him, Politics of History. It is a wonderful writing. There also you can find. When Europeans discovered Sanskrit, they had a shocking experience. How Sanskrit is so close to their mother languages like Greek and Latin, and how it is very close to their ancient culture in spirit. And naturally they thought it is because of the white man's supremacy. This should have been our product. And here the racial superiority, religious superiority, and political superiority, all these three work out together, and behind the superiority itself we have the conspiracy too. Racial superiority, the white man's burden. We are ordained by the God to look after the world. Even today that tendency is seen in many parts of the West, and that has been very well carried on by the American tradition too. So that white man's burden, it worked out. And the other one is the political situation. That time, in the late 18th century, it was a wonderful realization. German unification was on the anvil, and they wanted a great identity. They were not for the Semitic roots, and later that developed into Nazism, that's all we know. So they wanted to disown the Semitic roots and wanted to hang on to the Greek and Roman culture, but that was almost taken by the Greek and the Italian people, and the Germans needed something more, even more ancient, because Greek civilization, at the most the antiquity goes to 900 BC, Homer's period, or 500 BC or to 400 BC, Pericles and Alexander. But these Vedas, they go further distant time. When that being the case, they wanted to identify with the spirit of Aryans. And so, in the late 18th century works on Indian culture, Sanskrit and other things, we find lot of veneration and appreciation. That is how Germans started. And so they wanted to have an identification. And then the racial superiority. We belong to that, and we came. And British conveniently they took that. They wanted to show to the Indians that we are not the invaders. We are here to resurrect you. We are here to uplift you. We are here to teach you. And this has happened with your ancestors also. Even the Aryans came from Central Asia and Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and then they created culture. They developed the language and literature, and we are the saviors like that. And then by 1920 or so, 22, we came with the archaeological evidence in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Till then it was not known. So no archaeological evidences to contradict or to confirm the Aryan migration or invasion theory was available, and no trace of archaeological evidences to show whether it is a pre-Aryan or post-Aryan culture. And so it's all based on linguistics and comparative literature and comparative sociology, nothing more than that. By that time itself, they had one more point, that is the agenda of Christianity. They wanted to see that the white man's burden extending to religion also. Not to speak about the violence that they developed, rather they fostered in South America, North America, Australia, South Africa, and every place. Wherever Christianity went, there the local traditions were spoiled, were ruthlessly massacred. We know. If we have Holocaust of Jews, we have Holocaust of Zulus, Bantus, Incas, Mayans, and whatnot. So many Holocausts are there. And Indian Holocaust, in many ways we have. Like that, they started developing. And we know the Christian missionary, the Jesuits, and then the Basel mission people, like that, many came from Europe. And they picked up the local languages, and they did wonderful job regarding the local Indian languages. They learned Sanskrit, of course. They learned Tamil, Kannada, and others. For example, a person like Mogling in Karnataka started the first newspaper, and we know Reverend Father Kittel, first person to write the dictionary in Kannada, and C.P. Brown of Andhra Pradesh, who wrote so much in Telugu and published many works, and he too developed a dictionary. And not to speak of Caldwell, Reverend Father Bishop Caldwell, who wrote the other way famous comparative linguistics, Dravidian linguistics. All these things they came, and their agenda was to propagate Christianity, but they did this job also. But that should never be forgotten. Their main intention was to propagate Christianity, and they wanted to develop the tools for that. Why? We know in Sanskrit was learnt like that. Nobili, called Roman Brahmin, he came to Chennai at the end of 17th century, and he behaved like a Brahmin. He had a Yajnopavita and a cross tied to it. First they thought of converting the Brahmins to the fold of Christianity. So Brahmins are respected very much. When once they come to the arms of Christianity, the rest will follow. But it didn't happen. And that's why if you go to the works of that period, you'll be knowing Brahmins are praised high. Brahmins are appreciated and Brahmins are respected. And they say Brahmins are living gods, one and all are respected like that. They never had any motive of dividing Indian society into upper and lower caste, and upper caste exploiting and lower caste being suppressed like that. Though of course we do have such elements, but not as presented, not as colored and depicted in those writings of the West. When once they realized that the Brahmins will never get converted, barring few, everywhere black sheep will be there. Barring few, they thought we shall divide and rule. So Sama is of no use, we shall go to Bheda. And then in the later writings we see lot of Brahmana, Abrahmana, that is Brahmin, non-Brahmin, Brahmana, Shudra, the clash brought out. And the same thing we see in the writings of Caldwell also. Narasimharaja has given evidences from the original sources how Caldwell's work, though it is not scientific in many aspects, we should not question that. British officers used to send such circulars because it is helpful for us. It is helpful for both political and religious developments. Caldwell never learned Sanskrit, never knew Kannada, never knew Telugu. But just by knowing Tamil, he could write comparative Dravidian linguistics book on that. And in the first edition, he has confessed his limitations and he has showed his tentative nature. But these Tamil people, our own people, are greater enemies than the foreigners. They wanted to harbor the Tamil supremacy and the Dravidian identity. They hushed up the first edition, and the second edition, the first edition's preface is completely scrapped. And nowadays we don't find that. Only in the archives of British Museum or someplace we will be getting that. Dr. B.G.L. Swami, son of D.V. Gundappa, he has identified that and he got the microfilm and had shown it. Even today in Tamil Nadu, in no bookstore, no library, in no university, we get these things. And that Aryan Dravidian theory was conveniently later used by the DMK people. The fathers are Justice Party people. They started the anti-Brahmin movement, and the southern and northern Indian division, it started with that. And so, the religious supremacy of the Europeans, it found a lot of way in this regard. That is one parallel line, that parallel track. And so they wanted to show that the Brahmins suppressed the Dravidians. Dravidians are Shudras. And Brahmins are the invading Aryans. Before that, when John Marshall came out with the Harappan and Mohenjo-daro excavations, and now a note on John Marshall. Marshall was not the real person behind that. He was the head of that institution, Indian Archaeological Survey. But the subordinates that did the job, and some of the commendable job, which is against Aryan invasion theory, was kept aside by John Marshall. Even now we have the records. Recently they were all explored. When once the Harappan and Indus civilization was revealed, till then Aryans were noble, friendly, cultured, erudite, and messiahs of development, religion, what not. They once for all they became barbaric, invaders, ruthless, and bloodthirsty people, like that, what not. All the qualities were attributed, and the natives became Dravidians. You see, constantly change of grounds we see in this theory. That itself shows how shaky it is and how manipulated it is. Like that they developed. After that, the communists they came. They easily took it, and Karl Marx took it. Karl Marx, 19th century, he had his wonderful theory. Anything has to be explained within the framework of class conflict. And so the ruling and the ruled, the suppressing and the suppressed, the age-old theory that came into existence. In the meantime, even the Muslims had their share. Though they didn't wrote anything, they would encourage it naturally, because they too are invaders and you are also invaders. India is a land of migrants. Nobody is native. And so if we are invaders and if Britishers are invaders, your ancestors also invaders, like that. In that way, they wanted to take an excuse for their all that ruthless work, the invasion, the Muslim invasion or the Christian invasion or whatever we call. So, at one level, it is the politics, the German identity, it worked. German scholars did a lot of research in Vedas. And Max Muller, basically a German, migrated to England and became a citizen of in England, UK. And he wanted to show more loyalty than the rest of the Englishmen. And that's so he developed the theory further. I shall discuss that later. And this way of learning Indian languages, Sanskrit, for the purpose of religious propagation, it is well evident, and they had no hidden agenda. Earlier, they were very open. If you go to the first edition of Monier-Williams dictionary, Sanskrit English dictionary, you will be knowing Monier-Williams was the first person to occupy the Cornell Bowden chair in Oxford University. And recently it was Krishna Matilal who occupied the historical chair. And a nearby contender was Max Muller during the time of Monier-Williams. But Max Muller could not get, in spite of a greater learning, because he is not an Englishman. And Monier-Williams would get it. And Monier-Williams dictionary, first edition preface we have, for what purpose this chair is established. It is clearly said to read Indian classics and know, and how to use them for the propagation of Christianity, and how to tamper the text, and how to prepare the minds of the people. And we are well aware of the Macaulay's minutes and how Macaulay started the Indian education system and Indian law and other things. All these are contemporary boiling pot products. And Max Muller, though was denied the chair, he wanted to prove himself better, and he came out with the Rig Veda edition, the translation, Sacred Books of the East series, and other things. Unfortunately, that was funded by a great patron of Sanskrit and Indian culture, Maharaja of Vijayanagar from Andhra Pradesh. But all the thing they missed is, when once the roots of Indian culture is shown in Europe, all the Indians will turn to that. That's what they thought, to Christianity. And they also thought, once the Vedic meaning, how mundane are the Vedas, and how folkish are the Vedas, and how demystified is the Vedic literature, when once it is shown, all the Indians will ignore Veda, they will disown Veda, like that they thought. But fortunately, our people were illiterates. Our people were not initiated into English. Even today it is true. And because of illiteracy and because of not knowing English, much of our people's sanity is maintained. Thanks to ignorance. Why I am saying this? How stupid they are. But it has its own vicious repercussion. We know that. We can never ignore that. What I mean is, they are so hell-bent upon this, and they have so much of faith and confidence in their work. They know one thing. Even if ants move on a stone slab, after a century or millennium, it will become smoother. The surface will be eroded. Like that, like the ants moving constantly, they are doing that. Gachat pipilika yojanani shatanyapi agachan vainateyopi padamekam nagachati. If an ant starts moving, it can move and go to distance beyond yojanas, hundreds of miles. But even a kite, if it is not willing to move, it will not tread even a step. That is the essence of the Subhashita. And they have that. Like what we have a Kannada song, Marali Yatnava Madu, Marali Yatnava Madu. Again and again you work and work. It will ultimately give some result or the other. So they did. And it has that seed of the poison tree has grown big, and we have the bitter fruits now. And then this way, when they started tampering our texts and then misrepresenting the things, they showed that the Vedas have class conflict, racial overtones and undertones, like that. And they divided our people into, already it was divided, but they had a better understanding, and all that understanding was wiped off. They try to do in all spheres of life, in all walks of life, whatever messy things possible, all that they did. So it went on. And then, of course, the communists, they came to the forefront. And naturally, they thought religion is an opium to masses. And they thought only Indic religions, especially Hinduism, is an opium. The rest is an elixir, like that. And Nehru was the great champion of that. And during the time of Nehru, in the first ministry itself, the Ministry of Education was taken by no mean person, Abdul Kalam, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad. We know. He's Maulana. He's a product of madrasa. He took up the Indian education system, and he was ably guided by Nehru and people like Krishna Menon. And what would happen? So this is how in Indian education system it started, and people like Yashpal and others, all they came to the forefront, and this theory was developed. It developed to such an extent to show a great scholar, wonderful scholar, Mahapandita Tripitakacharya Rahul Sankratyayana. He would write a book like Volga Se Ganga in Hindi, one of the best sellers. It's translated into almost all Indian languages and to several foreign languages also. All our culture came from Volga. Volga Se Ganga Tak. In 20 stories, he represents how the Aryans came, the white, blue-eyed, golden-haired people, they came to India, and how the local culture was very bad, and how the priestcraft was developed, all these things. And Kalidasa is a hypocrite there, but not Ashvaghosha, a Buddhist. You can see the hallmark of hypocrisy In spite of great erudition, we can see that, and such tradition became the way in our universities. And our university professors, they again thought of these things. Sociology became the focus of study, and that too pseudo-sociology. And we have in every university, in every literary forum, whether it is in prose or verse or whatever, they developed this. Not to speak of theatre, painting. Only music and dance to an extent, they are saved from this. But now even in dance we have such people. One example is enough. Mrinalini Sarabhai's daughter Mallika Sarabhai is or Chandralekha. A few examples are enough to show even in the field of dance how this corruption has gone in. Well, why I am saying this Aryan invasion theory, it was conveniently taken by the communists, and then they started describing everything in this feature. People like R.S. Sharma, the great Paramacharya to all the contemporary communist scholars, whether it is Irfan Habib or Romila Thapar or whosoever, one has to read the eminent historian's book written by Arun Shauri. You will be knowing they have been ruthlessly exposed there. Even today it's going on, and even in the literature also the interpretations are going like that. For example, in Karnataka, the Veerashaiva system is supposed to be Dravidian, and the Vedic system is supposed to be Aryan, and it is the religion of the invaders, like that. The same interpretations are going on, whether you look at Kannada encyclopedia or whatever, not to speak of Tamil Nadu. It is rampant with these things. And even in northern India also the same thing, because of the contribution of Bahujan party and Mayavati. And in Bengal we have the vicious seeds, and again in Kerala, everywhere we see this. But the reality is something different. I shall give some evidences. I think most of you may be knowing. So, these things have to be challenged, have to be successfully refuted with great lot of effort. Here the problem is, somebody makes an allegation. We have to work hard and hard and harder to negate that allegation. Always we are in the defensive end, not in the offensive end. It's very difficult. Whenever we are put to an defensive end, much of our strength is lost in defense itself. What about making some statement and offending somebody? But the Vedic spirit is not that. And again we are very, very apologetic. Very apologetic. Even our scholars are very apologetic in this regard. We need not be apologetic. We shall be critical and yet confident. So, in these days, we have marine archaeology led by S.R. Rao and others, and other archaeological sources like Beasts and B.B. Lals, and then satellite photography. The Saraswati River's existence was revealed by the French people and also by the NASA satellite photographs. In late 70s, in early 80s itself, it was revealed. There is a river, there is an evidence of a river course from Himalayas to Rann of Kutch, till Rann of Kutch. We have the evidences at most of the places from 8 to 10 kilometers wide, and places 14 to 15 kilometers width, like that. It is all well recorded. And one great person, V.S. Vakankar, Dr. V.S. Vakankar, a well-known name in ancient archaeology and prehistoric study, who first revealed the existence of the cave paintings of Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh near Bhopal. He led a team of multi-dimensional scholars coming from different faculties of learning and made a land survey of Saraswati River in the early 80s or late 70s. I don't exactly remember the date. And all that proved there is a mighty river which existed before 5,000 years, flowing from the Himalayan mountain range to the southeastern direction and ending up in Gujarat. And this became a death blow to Aryan invasion. This itself is sufficient to show. Then the comparative metallurgy, Harry Hawks and Robert Anderson of USA, they did comparative metallurgical dating, that is the electrocarbon dating, and mathematical evidence, how mathematics has migrated from India to Mesopotamia, Egypt and other places. This is a very, very revealing research, because we generally know the first calendar is of Egyptians or Mesopotamians, something like that. And one point, why Mesopotamia is supposed to be the ancient civilization, the oldest civilization, like that it has been propagated. And even the Egyptians borrowed from Mesopotamia, because there is a hidden agenda. Mesopotamia is supposed to be the place which contained the mythical biblical Eden garden, where Adam and Eve lived. They lived without dress. They had nothing but a fruit to eat. Yet they were said to be in paradise. What else is communism than this? The Eden garden, mythical Eden garden's location is fixed in Mesopotamia. And in the early 19th century and all, the dating was so bad, no scientific approach was present. Only fathers and mothers and brothers of churches, they became scholars. And we know when the world was created, 4004 BC, October 23 morning 9 a.m. This is how the dating has been given. And Noah's Ark, something like 2424 BC, somewhere, Noah's Ark. Because it is all because of the God created the whole creation in 6 days, and that happened before 6,000 years. They blindly believed it in all its verbatim, and because of that they had to shrink all the events. That's how it happened. And that mindset has made Rig Veda 500 BC like that. Why? Before some 7 or 8 years, 8 years ago, I think, in Bengaluru Central College, there was one international seminar organized, and keynote address was given. It was on grammar, Noam Chomsky and Sanskrit grammar. That was the topic. Very great scholar, erudite person, who could wield the Sanskrit language very beautifully too, and translated Mahabhashya into English. A very, very great scholar, S.D. Joshi of Pune, Deccan College. He had come to give the keynote address, and he told that Rig Veda belongs to 500 BC. When Buddha was also not present. Buddha's time is 6th century BC, and by the 5th century BC, Buddha was already over. Is it so young, Rig Veda? And we asked. He could not answer. I have so much of respect, I know him personally. I could not. And even regarding the Sanskrit grammar also, my guru, Dr. Ranganath Sharma, he was present. He challenged him, but he could not speak much, my guru. I asked why. ತುಂಬ ಹೆಂಡದ ವಾಸನೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಪ್ಪ, ಬಡ್ದು ಓಡಿಸೋ ಥರ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು, ಅವ್ರ ಬಾಯಿಂದ ಹತ್ತಿರ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಎದ್ದು ಬಂದೆ. ದಟ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಈ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್. Yes, it is true. On that day, S.D. Joshi was in a high spirit. You see, why I am saying this, not to ridicule any personality. Still, I respect S.D. Joshi's erudition and his wonderful Sanskrit writing and his adaptation of Hamlet into Sanskrit, where me too took part, and I played the role of the minister Polonius. It's a wonderful piece of literature. Well, it's all something. But modern scholars, they are so much biased even today. Well, coming back to the theory as such, we know the Saraswati river evidence is one sufficient, can give death blow. But the dating of the Europeans, especially the priestcraft of Europe, it went in the biblical way, and that's why all the dates were squeezed. And Max Muller was of the same genre. And in 2 volumes his letters are published. His wife herself has published in 2 volumes, and it's all available. And in his letters, he has confessed, openly has confessed. He has written letters to British ministry and even to East India Company, as British rule in India, that if India is not taken by the Christian community, who will be under loss? He asks. I have proved with all my yeoman effort that Rigveda is of alien origin and Hinduism is of an alien religion. If people are not made know these things, and if British are not going to use this for their advantage, they will be incurring lot of disservice to their religion and country. And he also writes letters to his friends of Bengal. What prevents you people from embracing Christianity? I have already proved the alien roots and the meanness and the superficiality and no esoteric nature of Veda and all that. And he writes to his wife, by putting forth the false theory of Aryan invasion and all that, I have done great service to my religion and country and race, like that. Such confessions, there are many. Well, later he realized, it seems, in the fag end of life, that this is not the way. And there he writes, no force on earth can determine the date of Veda. Like that he makes. Earlier he said Aryan is a race, and later he says, no, it is not a race, it is a linguistic group. And linguistics became a very bad tool. Yesterday I told about Nirukta. Nirukta should never be used without the help of grammar, and it should never come into the forefront without the guidance of grammar. And how it has made havocs also I told. Likewise, linguistics. They created an imaginary Indo-European mother of all languages. It's a khichdi of so many languages. How hilarious the language is. They have butter, they have word for butter, but no word for milk. They have word for mist, but no word for water or rains, like that. We can't cook up a language like that. And they started looking at migration or invasion from Central Asia and Eastern Europe to India. And accordingly, all the rest datings have to be made. And even the whole history of the world has to be manipulated. If you go wrong at one place, deliberately go wrong, you have to correct so many things. And wherever you place your hands, there you will be incurring lot of mistakes. And that has happened in the case of propounding Aryan invasion theory. For that, the answer is manifolded, I told. Mathematics, migration of mathematics is one such. I begin with that, and I went to Mesopotamia and roamed in so many places. Now coming back to Mesopotamia. Seidenberg in 1967 itself, he proved with his revealing insight in mathematics and history of mathematics. And Rajaram has wonderfully summed up all this research in his books, Aryan invasion and origin of civilization and other works. There he shows how the Vedic mathematics means not the mathematics of Bharati Krishna Tirtha, it is the mathematics found in the Shulva Sutras, how it has been adopted by the Mesopotamians and later the Egyptians for the purpose of constructing the pyramids, and then by the Cretan, Minoan and the Greek civilizations. And also the approach of converting a circle into square, having the same area, and the way of the spoked wheel. These are all some of the inventions in mathematics and how they migrated from India, starting from the number system, and also the things like algebra and trigonometry. That study has gone in. And then we have population genetics also. Population genetics came to our help. And many people have a notion that Aryan is a race, whether it is local or foreign, whether it is the race of the invaders or not, that is a separate race. And in India, caste system or Varna system or Jati system, it's all based on the racial superiority and discrimination, like that. But it has clearly, molecular biology and genetics have proved that no migration of any race in large quantities has happened since 40,000 years in India. It's one race. It's all Caucasian race itself. It's clearly said. There is no difference. It's one. And the tone of the skin and all, it is because of the tropical nature and nothing more. And even the skull evidences available in the relics of, in the findings of archaeological sites like Dholavira, then Lothal, Kalibangan, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and many more than 5,000 sites are there. We don't find any such racial wars evidence, any such different races coming and having clashes with each other. And for that matter, we don't find killing which will happen in war as such. No evidence of breaking the skull or breaking the ribs or breaking the hands. No such things are available. Not even abundant weapons are available. If at all war, we should have had such evidences. It's all not available. So with all that, we know. And even in our literature, we have a lot of evidence. Profound evidences. In the Rig Veda, it is clearly said Saraswati flowing in its fullest extent from the mountains to the ocean. It's clear said in one stretch it is flowing. And it is the mightiest river, Ambitame, Naditame, Devitame, Saraswati, like that. That itself is conclusive evidence, convincing evidence. And in the Yajurveda also, the same thing is said. More than 65 times Saraswati river, in more than 40 hymns, she is prized in the Rig Veda. And even in the Yajurveda. In all the 4 Vedas we have, and even in the Brahmanas we have. It is not the Ganga which is prized much, it is Saraswati. And in the whole Rig Veda we have once the mention of Ganga. And we know it is not the migration from east to east, it is from east to west that has happened. Yes, it is Aryan migration, not invasion, but from India to the other places. From the linguistic sources also we can as well show. See, we linguists say that primarily in any language, the directions are decided by the geographical features. In Sanskrit, east is called Prak, west is called Prachi, east is called Prachi, and west is called Pratichi, and north is called Vudichi, and south is called Avachi. Or Prak, Pratyek, Vudak, Arvak, like that. When we turn our face to west, then east will be behind us, Prak. And the west is Pratichi. We are facing that. And Vudak means elevated, higher. Northern direction becomes higher because of Himalaya. Avachi, the lower oceans in southern India, that becomes the lower level, and that is south. So when we turn to west and start moving, then we can know the directions. Like that. And even in the even from the viewpoint of the names like Arya, Aryavarta, Brahma, Brahmavarta, Dravida, we can as well know how the geographical features are represented here. The word Arya never meant any race. It is noble culture, nobler culture ways of men, noble culture ways of human beings. That has come from the word Arya. Arya is a derived word. It has come from the word Arya. Arya has its root in R Karshane. Means that person who cultivates and an agriculturist is called Arya. Arya Swami Vaishyayoho, it is in Amarkosha. Means an agriculturist is called Arya. And the qualities of him is called Arya. Aryan. We know, earlier I mentioned in the first talk itself, the earliest culture is agriculture. And the nomadic person, nomadic human being became stationary, adhered to a place and started working with agriculture, animal husbandry, mercantile and other things from that point onwards. And so we know that the nomadic person who is called Vraptya, moving in groups somewhere else, and who is Anarya, not cultured, he is Arya. because of this agriculture. And we know Vaishya or Arya Swami Vaishya, as I mentioned, Vaishya, the businessman, the agriculturist, the trader, and everything put together, the common man. I told all that Visha, Loka, and all that in the earlier discussions, that it means he is a tempered person, he is toned down, mellowed down, tuned person, unlike the nomadic, the hunter. And that qualities, those qualities of him are Aryan in nature. And that place of him, it is meant for agriculture, that is cultivatable land, that is called Aryavarta. Avarta means a territory, a place. Aryavarta means Krishi Yogya Bhumi. What else is Aryavarta? In the Manusmriti it is said clearly that the land between Himalayas and Vindhyas, the two mountain ranges, Sindhu and Ganga, this particular area is called Aryavarta. Even today it is called Indo-Gangetic Plain. We know in the world the highest density of population is even today there. And we have, it's a plain land, lot of alluvial soil and many rivers which are fed by the glaciers of Himalaya. All that indicates that it is a very, very fertile land, cultivatable land, and because of that we have Aryavarta. And naturally the agriculturists and the products of agriculture being sold, and that culture developed. And within that we have Brahmavarta. In the whole gamut of Rigveda, and even in the other Vedas also, Brahma in Napumsakalinga often and often is referred to Vedas. Brahmana means the explanation, the ritualistic manuals belonging to the mantras of Samhita. Brahmana idam Brahmanam. So, Brahmana Avarta, the revealing of the Vedas, where it took place, and that place is called Brahmavarta. And Manusmriti again clearly gives Saraswati Drashadvatyor Devanatyor Yatantaram Tam Deva Nirmitam Desham Brahmavartam Prachakshate. The land between Saraswati and Drashadvati river is called Brahmavarta, the most sacred land, the holiest land. And that is Kurukshetra, the modern Haryana, that place. There the Vedas were revealed. Means Vedas were not written on the banks of Volga or Rhine or Rhone, whatever. It was written, it was produced on the banks of Saraswati and Drishadvati. And Kurukshetra, why it is Dharmakshetra? Because the Vedas are revealed there. And at the very same place we had Devasura Sangrama. At the very place we had Dasharagnya Yuddha in the early Rigvedic period. All this goes. And there Pandavas and Kauravas fought, and that is Panipat. The Veda Bhumi, the Brahma Bhumi is also the Kshatra Bhumi. Like that. And in ancient texts and all, we never get any impression that Tamil is somewhere different from the rest of the languages. I know Tamil. I have read the classical literature of Tamil. And I am writing books. I have written many articles. I have shown. Why? The recent book Dividing India or Breaking India by Rajiv Malhotra and others, there one independent section is devoted to show the roots of Tamil literature in the pan-Indian literary tradition. Michel Danino has done that, and many other scholars too have done. And in many of my writings too I have shown, and one of my books is on the anvil. And when it comes out, I am giving even more evidences to show how Tamil is indebted to Sanskrit, both in form and content. There, Dravida Desha is Tamil. These people say Tamila has become Dravida. Naturally, we want to make the word simpler. The human nature is want to make complex things simpler, and so the words will become smoother and smoother, and they will never become rougher and difficult to pronounce. No tongue twirlers will be developed naturally. Only with an intention they will be developed. Tamila cannot become Dramida. And even more important, we don't have any evidence. The earliest writing in Tamil is Brahmi. Now they are calling Tamil Brahmi Airavatam Mahadevan. It is stupid. It has been recently very well proved. One of my classmates who studied civil engineering with me, he himself has done a wonderful job in that regard. Well, there are wonderful works which have been done by the others also. For example, Shrikant Talageri and Navaratna Rajaram have done, and Conrad else too has done it. Why I am saying this? No literary history of Tamils go beyond 5th century AD. Dr. B.J. Swami, the greatest scholar in Tamil, Sanskrit, archaeology, historiography, epigraphy and whatnot, he has written wonderful papers, date of Tolkappiyam, date of Tevaram, Trayo, in all these papers he has shown. And none have challenged that. And the oldest available Tamil literature in Sangam poetry, we find lot of reference to yajnas, and then Vishnu and other gods, and the reference to varnashramas, and all have been highly respected, and it is very much in tune with the literary tradition of Sanskrit, something like Gatha Saptashati, Amaruka Shataka, and the court poetry of the later days. All that brings one truth, that is, Tamil is no way different from the Indian tradition, Sanskrit. And here, this Dravida, the word has come not from language, it has come from the place. Only in the later days, language and place became inseparable. In earlier days, it is the topography, it is the flora, fauna, nature of a place that determined the name, not the language. Well, ancient Greece or ancient Rome, that was not on language. Ancient Egypt, likewise. Only England, French and all, they depended upon language, but not this. Now coming to the word Dravida, Dhru plus Ila will become Dravila. Very easy Sandhi. We know Mantadesha Sandhi. And then we have the Ladayor Abhedaha Sutra makes Dravida will become Dravida. It's very simple. Dhru Ila means that which is fully dense forest, that which is a dense forest. That is the Deccan Plateau, known for its dense forests, and that is called this place. And even in ancient India, we knew that southern India is a dense forest, Dandakaranya. Even Rama could not penetrate easily into this forest. So we have the traditions in Ramayana. All along the course of southern Indian peninsula, along the coast, we have hundreds of evidences of shipwrecks and other things indicating that the so-called Harappan civilization, now it has been rightly called as the Saraswati civilization. The Saraswati civilization's evidence is found. And in ancient times, people could not come easily on the landway. It's very difficult to cross through, penetrate through the dense forest. That's why they used to come to the mouth of Saraswati river or Ganga river, and from then they used to take a course along the coast. And lot of migration have happened like that. Internal migrations, of course. And we know the evidences recently found near Mahabalipuram reflect the same thing. Near the Bhuj, they reflect the same thing. Like that, there are hundreds. You can as well refer to the works of our S.R. Rao. So, all these evidences, they went on, and we have now a completely convincing, not theory, convincing factual testimony that Aryan race is not a race as such. It is a way of life. It is a culture by itself, and it is essentially Indian, original, native in nature. And then that became the mother of many European civilizations. We have a wonderful comparative mythological study basis of the Puranas, and Pargitar and others have done good job there. Accordingly, in the Vedas, it is said there are 5 ancient clans. I told about that earlier. Yadus, Druyus, Purus, Anus and Turvashas. Them Yadus and Turvashas are the senior most. Then come Druhyus and Anus, and lastly the Purus. And from the Purus came the Bharatas, and then the name of India is called Bharatavarsha. But the Yadus and the others, they fought with each other. It was the fight. Against the Purus, the rest of the 4 they fought. The 10 kings belonging to these 4 clans they fought, and that is called Dasharagnya Yuddha, well detailed and depicted in the 3rd and 7th mandalas of Rigveda. There we find lastly the Purus or the Bharatas they won. Sudasa, son of Divodasa, he won, and under the guidance of Vasishtha, and later Vishwamitra too came to his folds. Earlier Vishwamitra was for these Dasharaja's 10 kings, and they were driven out. Means that was an internal fight. It is clearly said all belong to the same group of the Vedic origin. And Yadus were driven beyond the Aryavarta, that is the Brahmavarta. And they came to the western and southwestern India. That is near Mahishmati, Gujarat and other places. You know, Krishna and his ancestors, they belonged to Mathura earlier, and they made a migration to Dwaraka. That is the indication behind that. And in Dwaraka, Kushasthali is another ancient site of the Yadus. And then they were guided by the Bhrugus. And that's why that is called Bruch, Bhrugukacha. And then Mahishmati, Narmada, and they came all along the western coast. And the Bhrugus occupied a lot of these places. And we too know even today, all this coastal Karnataka and other provinces of Maharashtra, Konkan, they are all called Parashurama Kshetra. Parashurama is a great illustrious son belonged to the Bhrugu clan. And even we know the Odayars of Mysore, they are Yadavas. Many Yadava communities are seen in South India. And then the Turvashas, they were driven to the eastern end. And the dense forest of Sundarban was unable to penetrate. To a certain extent they could go, beyond that they could not. So they came southwards and they settled near the eastern coast, Andhra and others. And we know in the Vedas it is said, 50 sons of Vishwamitra, they were abandoned by Vishwamitra for not following the righteous path and obeying the orders of the father and accepting Devarata Shunashepa as the eldest, though he was the youngest by age, adopted son of Vishwamitra. Of 100 sons, only 50 sons accepted the superiority of Devarata, while the rest, the first 50, they would not. And thus they were driven out. And Andhraka the Panchashat, they are said Andhraka and others. And it is said in the Puranas too, that they came to Andhra Pradesh, and from then the name Andhra, that's how it developed. Like that we have the migration within. And the Druhyus and Anus were driven beyond the territories of India, beyond Indus river, Sindhu river. And so the Druhyus, they went to Iran, and then the Anus went beyond that, and they went to Greece like that. Ionians, the ancient name of Greeks, it has its roots in the Anus, Anavas. And we know from the Zend Avesta of the Persians, clearly the linguistic evidence itself shows that the migration is from the east to the west and not from west to east. Because in Zend Avesta it's clearly said we are Asuras. We hate enemies of ours, they are Suras, the Suras. But in ancient portions of the Veda and even in the Sanskrit tradition as well, Asuras are the elder brothers of the Suras, and both were good. When once Asuras adopted wily practices and corrupt practices, they were thrown out. They fought with each other, and then they were driven ultimately from India. So in the Vedas we have the combination of Suras and Asuras, and lastly ending up with the outcasting of the Asuras. That shows that Vedic civilization is earlier, and from then as an offshoot has come the Avestan civilization, and then to the rest of the world like that. I am not going to those details. What I want to say is, this is how the migration is not from the west to east, it is the other way, the converse. And much of the evidence is already provided, and also the date of Mahabharata. Mahabharata's war has been dated very well basing on the astronomical details. Accordingly, in 1960 itself, one person by name K.R. Srinivasa Raghavan showed that September 28th, 3067 BC, that was the beginning of Mahabharata war. And then on 13th of October